What is up, my fans? How y'all doing? Dave Scott here on Spaced Out Radio tonight. The man from NightTerrors podcast and YouTube channel, Bill Madon, is here tonight. And yes, he does have a nice shirt and tie combination going for this show. Hanging on out with us, talking all things weird and strange. For the last 6 years, Bill Madon has been the host of the ever-popular NightTerrors podcast and YouTube channel, where he talks about the strange and supernatural stories that literally haunt us all. With his deep-sounding voice and ever-present necktie, Bill delves into some of the darkest encounters and stories that have happened on this planet. There is no subject he will not touch. Why? Because these mysteries are what keeps many of us going, and Bill's curiosity going as well. We say hello, Bill Madon. It's so good to have you here, and we appreciate you taking the time. You know, your show is very popular with NightTerrors podcast and YouTube channel. How did you get started with this?
Well, I started out as a lark. I made 2 or 3 spooky videos. It just so happened that the third one went semi-viral. It was about the woman from a parallel universe, Lorena Garcia.
And tell us her story.
She woke up. She was on a different bed. She had different pajamas on. She went outside. She couldn't find her car. When she got to work, there was another man in her office, working in her office. It turns out she was working in a different branch of the business altogether. No big changes of her, but lots of little changes to show that she was not from Earth originally.
I always thought with that story, and now that you mentioned that story, I do recall hearing that a few years ago, where everything in her life had changed. I mean, she didn't dress the same. You mentioned that she missed out on the same job. I believe in her previous life, she was married or had a husband, but there was someone different now. And
she had broken up with her boyfriend and was going out with a new guy. And when she tried to visit the new guy and his son, there was someone else living in the house. And then when she got home, she checked her closet, and it turns out her boyfriend was still living in.
And it really does show, when you hear stories like that, how weird and strange life can be. What attracted you to these weird and strange stories? Were you always kind of curious, or was it something, Bill, for you that you just got captivated like many of us do?
I've always been into horror. I would sneak out at night, not out of the house, just out of my bedroom, to go watch the horror flicks on the three TV networks we had back then.
Oh yeah, and where was that?
Near Lake George, New York.
So for you, as you started to develop and look into a lot of these stories, for you, how did you, from day one of when you started NightTerrors to now, what has changed in you in the way you look at all of these subjects?
Well, there's just an insurmountable supply. I've never thought that I would run out of topics because there's just so many out there.
How do you go about choosing your topics?
About 50% of them are viewer suggestions. Another 40% are my own ideas, and 10% are from my research of my competitors.
We all have to do that. We all have to. Let's be honest. We all are checking on what everybody else is doing. But for you, though, how much do you enjoy doing this and looking into these topics? Because, I don't know about you, but I easily get dragged down rabbit holes. Are you the same way?
Oh, absolutely. But there's nothing more enjoyable than being dragged down a good hole.
True, on many different ways, but for you, as you kind of look into your own stories and your own investigations, do you think there is, like, life is one giant conspiracy, or that there is a bunch of secrets going on that we have become way too naive about?
Well, I don't like to get into the my own opinion of which conspiracies I believe in and which I don't.
Absolutely. So for you, the way you kind of take these, give us some detail on how you try and research one of these stories.
Well, what I do, and you can actually watch the process on Twitch. I do the show preparation on Twitch Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. And for my 2-hour live show, I cut it up into 8 segments for which I need 8 readings and 8, let's say, public domain or Creative Commons or sometimes fair use videos. So I'll do a reading on one aspect of the topic, and then I'll show a short video, and that'll be one 15-minute segment. I do 8 of those, and that's 2 hours.
When you started getting into this and delving into this more, okay, and delving into these topics, did you ever think that it would consume you? You know, like I know with this show doing it 5 days a week, I'm all consumed. And there are times where, because we bounce on so many different topics on a nightly basis that I you have to know a little about a lot. And the a lot that you're missing or giving up is sometimes detrimental to what you do. For you, how do you stay in tune?
I was never really afraid of being consumed. I'm still not fearful of that. What really scares me is ASMR. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me.
Really? I kind of some of it I don't mind. Some of it I don't mind. You know, you have like looking at your YouTube channel, you have taken so many topics that are go right throughout history, from predictions to aliens and ghosts to curses and everything. What do you love? Do you have a favorite topic?
My favorite is probably not one of the more popular topics. I really enjoy vampires.
How come?
It's all wrapped up in control and sex and all those dark motivations. Just fascinates me.
Well, you literally have hundreds of videos on your channel, and I'm scrolling through a number of them. And I'm just going to pick one where we can start tonight. And let's go into some big detail about this, because one of the topics that really doesn't get enough play up here in Canada, we've talked about it, but it almost seems impossible to try and get somebody to discuss what's happening, is the beheadings up in the Nahanni Valley in the Northwest Territories. Now, there are lots of rumors about what's going on there, whether it's, a lost First Nations tribes, whether it's Sasquatch, whether it's some sort of other mystic cryptid that is doing this, whether it's headhunters, whether it's, wild people who said to hell with society, this is our area. First off, break it down for our audience what the Nahanni Valley legend is all about.
Well, this is a super remote area in Canada that no one's lived in for a long time. They say the last Indian tribe left before 1900, let's say. But they also could be one of the people that are still hanging around there. People have gone there and found gold, but they don't usually have too much luck bringing it out of there.
Why does that place seem so violent, where prospectors and researchers alike have ended up found decapitated?
Yeah, it's so weird that the first few casualties, which are unrelated to each other, were all decapitations, and you'll have people missing as well, of course. But yeah, a lot of headless men thrown in there.
So, what do you think's going on there?
It might be survivors of the Indian tribe, but there's also the cryptid hunters have a good point there as well. It might be a cryptid.
For me, in looking at it, the way I look at this is there's I don't know if you heard the one story out of there about there was a group that was given 1 hour to investigate in there, and
No, I haven't heard that one.
And their helicopter pilot came in, dropped them off, pulled up, circled around, saw something in the forest, came right back down and grabbed them and said, "We got to get out of here." When the crew or the people who were on the ground said, "What's going on? We got an hour in here." He's like, "It isn't safe. We need to get you out of here right now."
Wow.
And there was never any talk of whether it was cryptids or something, but he saw some things moving in the bush. Now, I don't know whether that's just part of the legend or whether that's actual truth, but it's really weird because in Canada, we can find stories about anything. The hard part is trying to find people to talk about it. And there just really isn't a lot of people who want to discuss this. Let's go to one that I'm not so familiar with, but just learned about earlier this year. You've done 2 shows or 3 shows, pardon me, recently on the Denver airport in Denver, Colorado. What makes this airport so conspiratorial?
Yeah, there's a lot of things about the Denver airport. It's, I think, the second biggest airport in the world, the largest U.S. airport. When they started building the place, the first buildings that they built, they said they built them wrong, so they had to bury them. But they buried the first 4 or 5 buildings that they built. The dedication capstone has a Masonic symbol on it and the names of lodge leaders on it as well. And it says it was dedicated by the One World Airport Commission, which is an organization that doesn't actually exist. They have lots of art exhibits, permanent art exhibits at the Denver airport, one of which is supposed to predict the coming apocalypse. There's supposed to be tunnels underneath, which are either for the higher echelons in case of nuclear war, or they may be the lair of the lizard men beneath the Denver airport. And then, of course, you have Lucifer, which you see on the road into the airport.
I saw Lucifer earlier this year, and apparently it is cursed from the
Lucifer
artist.
being, I'm sorry, Dave, Lucifer being a combination of blue and Lucifer. It's a blue fiberglass statue whose first victim was its sculptor. When it was nearly done, a part of the sculptor, some say the head, fell on the sculptor himself, severed the femoral artery in his leg, and he was not too long for this world, unfortunately. His sons were able to finish the project, though, luckily.
There have been reports that other people have died there as well upon approaching it. Have you ever heard about that?
No, I haven't.
I don't know whether it's just part of the rumor or part of the legend or lore about that entire junction there, but there does seem to be a lot of real interesting murals and stereotypes that go along with it. Why do we want to believe that this airport, of all places, is literally an apocalyptic area to scatter to for the rich and the elite? Why do we want to believe all of this?
That's a good question. Why do we want to believe? Maybe we're seeking a good scare, perhaps, like people who love to ride the roller coaster.
There are reports of these tunnels underneath that are both used by military and others that, connect to everywhere. A lot of the secret bases, whether it's Area 51, whether it's Dulce in New Mexico, or dug way up in Utah.
Oh, yes, I've heard those rumors, yes.
What do you think about them?
Like you were saying, what do we seek about it? I've always liked horror has always drawn me, and spooky stuff has always drawn me. And I'm so happy now that I can help provide that spookiness for other people.
Bill, for you, when you look at areas like that, are there a number of other areas in the United States that seem to portray the same ways as the Denver airport?
That brings to mind the people that go missing in the national parks, of which David Paulides speaks.
Where do you think those people are going?
Originally, David's theory, from what I've gathered through my research, was that it was Bigfoot. That was his original theory. He doesn't talk about that much anymore, however. He nowadays he likes to leave it up to the reader, usually, I believe.
And what does Bill Madon think?
I think that's an interesting idea, Sasquatch. There are so many other strange things, like when people getting lost in the national parks and leaving their shoes and sometimes even their clothes behind.
Geez, I am all on board with the portal thing. I believe it's portals, a lot of it, or some strange cryptid encounters. Whether it's a Sasquatch female that maybe lost a youngster and is looking to, recapitalize on being a mom, or some raging dog man that wants to rip everything apart. I don't know, but when you get a lot of these situations where you're walking with someone in the forest or even in a downtown city, and they're right beside you or right behind you by a few feet, then you turn and look and they're gone. I mean, you would hear noise, and a lot of times people will be yelling for people, but they won't be able to hear each other. Yet they were screaming aloud, saying, "Where are you?" And technically, on both sides, they're in the same area. Like,
Right.
it just doesn't make sense, man.
Yeah, that's one of the common things about disappearances in the national parks, that uh, sometimes when they are found, when they're lucky enough to be found, it turns out they were only a few yards away from where the search parties were going over.
The weird part about it is, I mean, when you find clothing that is folded, and shoes that are untied and placed beside the clothing. I mean, it does not scream to me human abduction. Doesn't
Right,
it
right.
doesn't it seems like there's something a little bit more awkward about this. When you've read a lot of these cases, are you in the belief that this is happening by maybe some twisted people?
Oh, sure. Men of the woods, men of the forest,
The wild men.
the wild men of Appalachia. Yeah,
Yeah, well, they believe there's some on the West Coast here too.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, that's just a weird and wild topic right off the bat. I know there's a couple of people who live in the wild out here. My buddy has ran into them, and yeah, he says it's kind of weird. You have investigated a number of cryptid sightings, and you did a story a couple of weeks ago regarding some very very horrific cryptids seen and experienced by people in the Appalachia. What's going on out there?
The Appalachians go back, a couple hundred years. So the first Irish Scotch settlers, and they got their own version of witches up there, and their own wild men, and as well as the cryptids.
Okay, when you say strange things, what do you mean by that?
A place where people settled in the deep, deep woods and never really came out.
So what you think is that there is what, a bunch of human beings that have kind of left society and are making their way through living in the forests on their own? And how do you know this?
Well, there's the Blue Fugati family that became so inbred that their skin color became blue.
What happened with them? Are they still around? Are they a
So
family
they
out
say.
there?
You'll see someone with a bluish tinge, in that area, and but the other locals, when you ask them, they keep their mouth shut.
Why is it so restricted in people wanting to talk about them over here?
Maybe the clannish nature of the families.
Does that go on through history? Like,
Well,
is
yeah,
it
of course, they've had to rely upon themselves for hundreds of years, and that leads to them not trusting outsiders.
as a Canadian, we don't deal with many that we at least know of wild people. So what makes this area so unique that people have left regular society and grown up like a wild animal?
I don't know if you would say it like a wild animal, because they're human beings, but they've been separated from, let's say, civilization for hundreds of years.
No voting, no nothing, no ID.
Right? I'm sure they don't come out to vote.
Are there government officials that track these people, or are they in areas that the government won't even go down those roads?
If by government you mean, let's say, someone who wants to research what their folk songs are, you might see a couple of researchers up there for folk songs, or
Okay.
for let's say their witchcraft. If you want to learn about what they call their granny witchcraft.
Now, do they believe this witchcraft works, or they're just so adapted to nature and the outdoors that it seems like witchcraft?
Well, these are their medicine people. The witches are, so that not only are they able to cast a spell, but they're able to set a bone as well.
All right, let's move on to a new topic here. From feral humans to controlling the human mind. Are you a big believer in MK Ultra?
Oh, MK Ultra definitely existed. There were congressional hearings about it. The big question is whether it's still going on today. A lot of people think it is.
Do you think it is?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I think the government, especially these days with all the surveillance through the internet, I'm pretty sure that's not the only thing they're doing to people without their knowledge.
So for people who may not know what MK Ultra is, could you define it for us?
Sure, it was a program started in the late 50s, early 60s, lasted about 2 decades until about the end of the Vietnam War, about the mid 70s. And they were doing Cold War related research as to whether they could use drugs or alcohol or lysergic acid or what have you to tear down a person's personality and then rebuild it so that these people or these soldiers would obey like robots.
For people listening, it would be the exact same if you went and watched the Bourne movie series with Matt Damon, the Bourne Identity, and all the trilogy of those. That's what we're talking about when it comes to MK Ultra, building these super soldiers out of people. And it goes a little bit further than that. A lot of people believe there's also aliens involved, or reptilian type of creatures involved, that it has gotten into kidnapping, murder, suicides, or murder suicides. It's a very dark topic that very few really go deeply into, Bill.
No doubt. There's a reason for that. It's very dark, as you say.
What would be the purpose in your mind for the United States government having a project like this?
Well, I thought the Soviets were already doing it. They thought they were already using drugs to enhance their soldiers. So one might say it was the natural next step for the paranoid secret services over here to take up the same studies.
I know people who have been in the MK Ultra program, and I'm not saying that they are bad people or that they're making it up or that they're traumatized. I believe these people that they have been part of this my lab type of investigation and taking and so on and so forth. Have you ever talked to anybody who has been involved with this program as a victim and just kind of got an overview of what they went through? And if so, what did they go through?
I have not, but I've seen an excess of the old footage of when they were having the hearings and when it was more a topic of conversation back in the day when the program was revealed to the public. And yeah, these people's stories are absolutely heartbreaking because it seems that they were able to successfully break down a number of people, but they weren't actually able to build them back up again.
And people go nuts. They literally go nuts. And the one thing that we always think is that we always hear the stories coming out of Russia about what they do to test. They have no problem doing human genetic testing on their own people with soldiers. I mean, there was the famous story of the sleep study where they kept people awake for as long as they possibly could until literally some were eating their own, and
Right.
when they finally took the final one out, I mean, it was just nightmarish. Now we only know this, it could be out of legend, it could be true. I mean, who knows what is actually happening? But I mean, it really goes to show that the human mind is extremely fragile on an overall status if you play with it.
No doubt. Well, they were merciless in what they did to these victims. Just they weren't playing so much as attacking them on if not a daily, then an hourly basis.
There's a great story of Melinda Leslie, Lorian Fenton, and Misha Johnson all getting taken the night after they got off the air with Coast to Coast AM. And it's a scary, scary story, but I mean, it's incredible nonetheless of these three ladies being taken down. They knew they were in a secret base. They knew it was somewhere in California. They're not sure if they caught a train over to Nevada. They were all blindfolded. Their heads were covered up. They were drugged. One of them or two of them were brought face to face with an 8-foot reptilian who said that if they didn't stop investigating things, that this thing would come back and do absolutely horrific things to that person and their family members. It's quite a heavy story.
Maybe also to deter them from speaking out as well.
Absolutely, but thankfully it hasn't.
Oh,
and I don't think there's a roll of duct tape thick enough to actually shut up Melinda Leslie or Lorian Fenton, to be honest.
Amen.
One of the topics that you have really delved into over the last month or so is immortals. Now, this subject absolutely intrigues me. There's a couple of subjects that do: immortals and time travel. Because ever since I was a kid and watched Highlander, I always thought that there would be potentially some sort of immortals walking on this planet. And maybe it's hope. I sure as hell know I'm not one. I don't think I've ever met one, but I do believe that that immortality is real. And I do believe that maybe there are some special people out there, if we could call them people, that are immortal. What's your thoughts on immortality?
Right. It's not easy to find their stories, but when you do, they're fascinating. People who are seen not only during their lifetimes, but in the following centuries as well.
Now, you have investigated a few of these. Who did you pick on?
During the most recent show, I did a Chinese emperor that wanted to be immortal. And for that reason, he drank mercury, I think. That wasn't such a good idea for him. We did another Chinese guy about which there's a lot of documentation of him living like 256 years. That one we did as well.
There's also a number of movie stars that have had pictures or portraits painted of them that look very, very similar to people today. Looking at your thumbnails, you got Justin Timberlake, on one side, and then you got this picture from, I believe, the 1800s of another person. You've got Keanu Reeves up there as well, and there's a painting illustration of somebody that looks almost identical to him way in the past. There's been, I know, looking into this subject, there's been talks of John Travolta or Tom Cruise or many others that have been cited with artistry or photography of the past. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. There's so many of these out there these days. Maybe a case of reincarnation?
I don't know. You tell me. Do you think it's reincarnation, or do you think it's immortality?
There you go. That's about the only two things that could be, right?
I know what I want it to be, Bill. I know what I want it to be really, really bad, and I don't, but I don't think I'm right, Oh yes, Dirty Filth says in the chat room, Nicolas Cage,
Right.
There's the famous picture of him as well. I mean, granted, the fact that, over time, it's not surprising that there are people out there. I mean, we all have, what is it? I think there's a study that almost everybody has between 4 and 7 doppelgangers on this earth. And be damned if there's other people who look like me out there. I apologize. I apologize profusely, right, for giving you a face for radio and a voice for print, but it's just one of those things that I always wonder about, I mean, do you believe that it's just like the doppelganger effect?
Your voice is great, Dave. That's a third possibility, right? Doppelganger effect. I never thought of that.
What's the one that really weirds you out?
Well, I recently saw one that I had never seen before. The one of Jimmy Fallon, and the old black and white of him taken. It looks like in the '60s, and he hasn't aged a day.
Was it from the 60s? Because he was born in the 70s, I believe.
So they say. But if just one of them was immortal, that would be incredible.
Feltz, we got to do more on immortality and time travelers, because it just trips me out a little bit. We need to do that. What's your thoughts on aliens?
Oh, they're out there. They're definitely out there, in my humble opinion.
Have you ever seen one?
I don't believe I have. People are always asking me, has any of these weird things ever happened to you? And I always had to tell them no, except until very recently, when I think I met a ghost.
Oh, you got to tell us that ghost story.
I was actually getting gasoline, and I went inside. I think I picked up a 6-pack of Coke or something like that, and I wanted to get out of the convenience store, but I couldn't because there was people coming in at the same time. There was it looked like to me like a grandmother and 2 children, like maybe, I don't know, 5 and 13, 2 small boys. And I thought, okay, I'll wait until these guys get in here, and then I can leave, because I want to get the hell out of the heck out of the store. And so the 2 kids come in, and I'm waiting for grandma to come in, but she doesn't come in. So I thought, well, she decided to stay outside. Then I walk out of the store. There's no one outside whatsoever. There's no, and I looked at the cars too. There's nobody in any of the cars either. She had just completely disappeared. I think she might have been accompanying them in spirit form.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if we saw a ghost or not, but Tim Senor, who does our UFO report, when we traveled to Las Vegas back in July, we stayed at Caesar's Palace, and we literally arrived at Caesar's Palace at about 11 o'clock at night after our flight was delayed 4 hours in Denver due to a lightning storm right over top of the airport, because planes and electricity don't mix, and we got to Caesar's Palace. It took us 2 hours. They had 200 people in line checking in, and they had 4 people up front. Felt bad for them. It was horrible. Took us almost 2 hours to get through and get to our rooms. But while we were walking to our rooms, we had this guy. He must have looked about, now this is around 1 o'clock in the morning. He must have looked around about 90, 100 in older periodical clothing, full body, walked right by us. I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And he barely acknowledged us. And it was only us 3 in the hallway heading towards our tower. And we turned and looked, and we just watched the guy continue wandering on. Don't know if he was a ghost. Don't know if he was alive. Or maybe he was alive but didn't realize he was a ghost. Or maybe he was a ghost and didn't realize he was still alive. I really don't know. But it was a trippy experience. I looked at Tim, and Tim and I are like, was that guy real? Or was that actually a spirit that we just saw? Because, the Caesar's Palace is what, 70 years old, 75 years old? It's still gorgeous inside. But, it wouldn't be beyond the reckoning of it happening.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Well, I don't know. But I had asked you about aliens and some of the alien encounters that you have covered videos on. Is there a story out there that sticks out for you regarding extraterrestrials?
I kind of like the one about the goblin attack. I think it might have been in Kentucky, where the family witnessed the landing of these goblins, and they started to attack the house, and they were firing out through the screen door on the porch, and they finally got out of there, and they convinced the police that they at least believed what they were telling about the story.
You know what's amazing about that, the Kentucky Goblins, is a few years ago, Greg and Dana Newkirk did a series called Hellier, on that entire subject, and it took them really down a real rabbit's hole that led to everything from Indrid Cold to conspiracies about whether or not the goblins existed. Took them to a little town called Hellier in Kentucky, where they went through the tunnel systems and so on and so forth. Now, they never found that, but I mean, do you believe that the goblins are still around?
I believe they were then. I don't know if they are now.
You also have a weird one regarding this going over in Japan about some children captured by a UFO. What happened there?
Well, actually, the children themselves captured a UFO.
Oh, okay.
They observed this disc-shaped UFO, and it was small enough for them to carry, actually. And one of them would bring it home, and then overnight it would disappear. And they would go back out to where they found it, which it was like a rice paddy, I guess. And they would find it again and capture it again, and then a different kid would bring it home, and then overnight it would disappear from that kid's home. Yeah, it involved quite a number of children too.
Really? And did nobody ever think of any of these children or their parents turning it over to authorities?
Unfortunately, the last time that it disappeared from one of the kids overnight, it never appeared again in the rice paddy.
How long ago was that story? I'd never heard that one.
I believe this was early 60s, perhaps 1964.
Everything good happened in the 60s with UFOs. The idea that these kids could pick up this UFO and it would disappear overnight. I mean, did any of them see how it was disappearing and reappearing in the same area?
No, they never saw it, but it did give them time to sketch it, especially this one kid who drew detailed sketches of it. So on the bottom of there was kind of a grate, and they say that you could look into the grate and see electronic components inside.
Interesting. Very interesting. How about the one in Australia? You have a UFO mystery there.
Right. I'm kind of blanking on that one. I'd never heard it before, and I'd done it for the first time for that show. Let me see if I can remember. I do remember that the principal really didn't want anyone talking about it. It had appeared to the children and some teachers, and the principal put the kibosh on it. For quite a long time, no one did talk about it. But then it came out like decades later.
I want to get back to time travel here because I know you've done a number of specials on time travel and whether or not it is real. I mean, we talked a little bit about it earlier on, but I should ask you point blank. Do you believe that there are time travelers walking on this planet right now?
Well, there's lots of people who say they are, and there are lots of stories of people having time traveled. And again, if just one of those is true,
what would you do if you learned that time travel was true?
I'd try to find out how to take advantage of that fact. Go back in time and hopefully not make so many mistakes this time.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yeah, I can honestly say I would be doing some great investments. That's for sure. You imagine if way back in the day you took that extra $10 and instead of going to the video store, you invested it in Apple,
Right.
way back in the day.
Or Casio watches.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But you do have some interesting stories in regards to time travel. And I don't know if anybody or even if you heard the story. There was a story a few years ago about a gentleman who allegedly did do that. Is he went to Wall Street and he made millions within a very short amount of time regarding investments. Did you ever hear that time travel story?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he got arrested. They wouldn't let him out to access his money, but evidently he did make like millions on the stock market before he got arrested. So somehow he disappeared from jail somehow, or was released on his own recognizance or something, and then he vanished.
Yeah, never to be seen again. And I mean, he racked up something like $300 million within a few months. It was just crazy type money on that too. just knowing what was going to hit and when to sell and everything. I don't know if that story is true or not, because there's so few details about it. But I mean, I want to believe, Bill. I want to believe so bad in the whole time travel aspect. You did a story about a kid who traveled through time. Tell us about this young kid.
Right, the politician. He actually ran for president in 2018, maybe.
Are you talking Andrew Bashago?
Yeah, Andrew Bashago. Because young children were so resilient, they were the only ones who could travel through the portal that the government had developed. And he wound up getting in a picture at the Gettysburg Address, and you can see him in this picture. It's an old like a daguerreotype picture.
Yeah, you know what? I think what killed Andrew Bashago's entire reputation on that was the idea that he was allegedly supposed to win the presidency in 2016. And
That's what it was, 2016. Thank you.
And I don't know. I mean, I want to believe Andrew Bashago so much. I really do want to believe him. But the whole president thing just really threw it out of my mind. It really did.
If you've ever seen him speak, like on YouTube videos or whatever, he's very convincing.
Extremely convincing. Now, the funny part about it is, I know there are people still to this day, like, and I'm talking, I've had this conversation recently, who believe that these jump rooms are real and they are tied to the secret space program. And you could get to the moon, you could get to Mars by some of these.
I've heard
You
that.
What's your thoughts? Do you think they are real?
It wouldn't surprise me if they were, because I think that the government has technology which they're probably hiding, perhaps technology they garnered from alien visitors.
Do you think the time travel does come from visitors from another planet, or did the time travel come here from, say, fellow Americans, say 1,000 or 500, 100 years from now?
It could be people traveling back in time. It could be our own people, human people, traveling back in time.
Even though Back to the Future tells us not to do it. Let's go on with time travel stories here. You have one of a knighted time traveler of the realm. What's this story about?
Could that be the guy that's buried in that cemetery in London, the Brighton Cemetery, where they believe that the mausoleum itself may contain the time machine? I think the Courtois mausoleum is the name of the mausoleum, and Hannah Courtois was friends with this wacky inventor who also invented like special torpedoes for the Navy, and another gentleman who could read and translate Egyptian. And at that time, in the Victorian period, the Victorians believed that the Egyptians knew how to travel in time. So if that translator was able to translate certain key passages, and that inventor was able to bring that machine to fruition, who knows what that mausoleum may contain.
Very interesting. I tend to believe that time travelers are here. I tend to believe that it's still very government secret. But I mean, you think about, with a lot of the advancements we are making, Bill, with wanting to go to the Mars and the moon and everything that goes along with it. I mean, you'd have to think that that technology has already been created or tested before they go somewhere, because usually when they start talking about doing something, it's already been done.
Right.
That's kind of the way I look at it. I mean, if you look at what Ben Rich, former head of Lockheed Skunk Works, said in the 1990s, in the early 90s, regarding, Lockheed was already 50 to 80 years ahead of where the public was seeing at that moment in time. I mean, it's just weird that way, watching this all kind of unfold right in front of us.
Right.
You also have a real interesting pieces on here about out of place artifacts, from bricks to the crystal skulls to what looks to be remote controls and bottles of whiskey and everything like that. What intrigues you about these topics?
Yeah, those are interesting. For example, the hammer they found encased in igneous rock in England. There's also artifacts that actually look like a cell phone that has been found, and there's another artifact that looks like a spark plug that was found inside igneous rock, which of course would mean that the rock is millions of years old.
I like the one in China with the Swiss watch.
Well, I've seen the picture, and it's a petite woman-sized watch that again was encased in rock that was, if not hundreds of thousands, then millions of years old.
It almost makes you think that this is a repeat of civilization.
Yeah, there's a lot of people have said that there's certainly been enough time in the 4.5 billion years that the Earth's been in existence for civilizations to rise and fall and completely disappear by the time we came on the scene.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see, Bill, if we'd already done this all before on this planet. I mean, it seems so far-fetched and very sci-fi, but I mean, how else do you kind of portray it, Bill, when you look at the topics and you look at some of the artifacts that have been found, and it's right out of where we see. I mean, even in the Egyptian, a lot of the Egyptian scripts that are carved into the rocks. I mean, seeing helicopters and speedboats and airplanes and UFOs and I mean, it just makes you wonder what was actually there, even going back as little as 4,000 years ago.
Airplanes that they have tested in wind tunnels successfully, even though they're made out of gold.
I'd like a gold airplane. I'm just not oil rich enough right now. That is for sure. So the idea behind what with time travel here is, do you think that we are able to go into the future, or like Andrew Bashago claims, go into the past? Are we able to jump into different time lines to travel to different planets? Or are you a believer in that all, Bill?
Oh, we're definitely able to go into the future. That could be done now. Well, it could be done if you travel towards the speed of light. For every year that passes for you in your capsule, tens or hundreds of years would pass here on Earth. So you could definitely, and Einstein says so too, you could definitely travel to the future through time.
Would you like to be a time traveler, Bill?
I would like nothing better. How about yourself, Dave?
I don't know. I'm still waiting for the aliens to pick me up.
Just get some of that good evidence implanted on you and you're all set.
Yes. Where are the aliens when you need them? One of the topics, and we could probably carry this one over, is the Mandela effect. Now, I'm not a big believer in the Mandela effect, but there's a lot of strangeness. What's your thoughts of the Mandela effect?
Well, I'm convinced that the Mandela effect is real. I think that what it's more likely is that if you've ever heard of the theory of the multiverse, that people experiencing something different today than what they remember in their minds may be a reflection of the fact that they encountered the former object in a different universe.
What's your favorite Mandela effects?
Well, of course, you got the classic, in which Nelson Mandela was supposed to have died in prison, but he didn't.
Which is what it's named after. I think my favorite is the Ford logo with the little curly Q on the F.
Yeah, yeah.
My buddy owns a Ford dealership, And apparently that curlicue has been there forever. And yet, right beside me here, I actually have an old Ford key. It's hard to see on here, but it does not have the curlicue.
Aha.
The other one that kind of weirds me out too, and a lot of people will roll their eyes on this, but the reason why I'm reminded about it now is the fact that in Canada and even many parts of the United States and around the world during this time of year, we wear poppies for veterans as a reminder for World War II, the end of World War II. And we're always told to put it on our left chest because that's where the heart is. Yet, if you look at the human body now, the human heart is still on the left, but it's more towards the center of the chest now.
Right.
Yet, we were always told that the heart is on the left side.
Right. There's also some people who remember a different number of stars and or stripes on the flag from their childhood than we have now.
Do you believe it's the Berenstain or Berenstain Bears? There are a number of these strange ones. What do you think are some of the top ones out there? Is it movies? Is it just everyday life? Is it the fact that the world didn't end in 2012? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, some people think that's when the timelines began to diverge was in 2012.
I always thought that, maybe the Aztecs, when their calendar ran out, I mean, barring the simple answer that, number one, they were on the Gregorian calendar, which would have made December 21st, not December 21st. But nobody ever asked the question is, what if their calendar guy died and there was nobody to replace him? Like, why was that never in the picture there? Nobody ever asked that. We always want to talk about the end of the world and that the Mayans had predicted the end of the world. But I also thought of it too is, what if that was some sort of transition in timeline? The Luke, I am your father from Star Wars, which never happened. What do you perceive it to be?
Yeah, that's a good one. The Luke, I'm your father. That never happened. Scotty beam me up. Never happened. Berenstain, I remember the stain. I thought that was quite unusual when I was a little kid. So I'm from the universe that where it was Stain, but a lot of people remember Stein.
I want to ask you though, could the Mandela effect have been affecting all of us differently?
You have lots of people remembering the same thing though at the same time. The Shazam movie that never happened.
Another one that was pointed out by Brian Stavely. I always remember Cuba being a little bit further away or a little bit closer to Miami and not as big of an island. Yet you look at a map now and Cuba's huge.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the Cuba itself, but wasn't there something about the continents themselves having changed shape somewhat? Like whether or not South America was directly underneath North America type thing, I seem to remember.
Right. And yet South America is closer to Africa than North America. Let's get to another topic here, because another one of the high strangeness topics that you have covered over the last little bit, and it's been a topic that we have delved into in this subject because it just intrigues me, is these stairwells in the middle of the forest. Now, the rumor says that you should never go to the top, because if you get to the top of the stairwell, you can never come back. What's your thoughts on these stairwells?
Yeah, the stairs in the woods. Another slightly viral video for myself. I was one of the first people to cover that back in the day. Most everyone knows about them now. Yet some people, upon climbing them, find that they lose the sounds of the forest and everything goes silent. There's a story of I want to say, Portuguese gentleman who was worked in one of their national forests, and he actually was like running from a wild dog or something and ran up the stairs, And when he came back down and went back to the forest HQ, it turned out he'd been missing for 5 years.
No way. 5 years.
These are reports that I found myself going through Reddit. A lot of people will say, well, the original story was just made up by this guy, this Forest Service rescue guy. But what I did was I went to the Reddit responses to find the stories that people were relating that had really happened to them, and that's where I found that Portuguese story.
Incredible. Did you ever hear the story of the guy who in Sweden who went, I guess he was a plumber and he went to fix his sink because his sink was leaking and he went under his cabinet, and then while he was under there, like a portal opened up and he was able to crawl through the portal to meet his 70-year-old self.
Oh,
and
yeah. I've seen
and
the photographs too. They pose together like with showing the same tattoo kind of thing.
what's your thoughts on that? I mean, because
Yeah,
that could easily be a father-son thing.
yeah, right. Well, I don't know. Supposedly it was him and then him as an older person, and that they met each other. And there's photographic evidence as well.
Yeah, because the guy actually ran his phone, but I mean, it's been highly broken down over time, and the skeptics have absolutely torn it apart. But I think that's the problem that we have with a lot of information these days is we become so highly skeptical of absolutely everything due to everything from costumes to CGI to a 4-year-old being able to edit his own YouTube videos with precision and no college education that it used to need. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to really figure out what is real and what's the truth anymore, Bill.
It's going to get worse too with these what they call deep fakes, being able to duplicate the image of somebody and their voice. It's going to be wild in the coming years if we don't blow ourselves up.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen.
And I got a feeling the big one's coming. And not too very much longer either. The nations are beginning to choose up sides.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
We're just going to drop the gloves and go?
There's going to be a powder keg moment, and I think we're going to see it, if not within 2 years, then definitely within 1 year.
Wow, that's quite the prediction. How come you feel this? What kind of lends you the issue on that?
Just the fact that right now you have, without going into politics, you have different nations joining others, some that used to be friends and now they're enemies. It's more and more volatile with each passing week.
That is very true in regards to that. But I mean,
also, I'm sorry, excuse me, Dave. Also, I think in times before war, you'll notice that women are held in higher regard than when it comes to the war. Women are held in less regard. I remember back during Vietnam, passing by like strip clubs everywhere. The reason I think that women were held in less regard during wartime.
Getting back to these stairways for a second, though, have you ever met anybody or talked to anybody who has ever seen any of these mysterious stairways in the middle of a forest?
Usually through comments. I'm halfway sure I've seen them myself. I never climbed any, but I'm halfway sure I've seen them myself. I've lived in not even suburban, but rural areas my whole life.
When we say stairways, are these just stairways that are there, or maybe there was a structure or a home or a barn surrounding them at one point?
Some people say that's the case. In other cases, however, no. They're just sitting out there alone.
What would happen, or what's the alleged speculation of what would happen if you made it to the top of the stairwell?
You got people who think maybe that's a deadly thing to attempt. Other people that have found a portal at the top, and still others that they feel nauseous as they climb up, and they really don't want to get to the top. They're feeling so sickly that and they know it's being caused by the stairs, so they beat feet as fast as possible from that locale.
Would you ever do it?
I might. I don't know. It depends. I don't know if my wife would let me.
If I was with my ex-wife, definitely. Could be much worse. As we keep on going through some of your great stories that you have covered over time, there's a bunch of different weird cryptids out there. Most of us, we're always talking Dogman. We're always talking Bigfoot. But we forget about the Glimmer Man. We forget about Siren Head or the Hat Man or anything like that. Have you followed reports on any of those?
Oh yeah, the Hat Man. I've looked at the Hat Man stories before. Those are usually very malicious characters. The Hat Man.
And what did you find?
That it's not good to run into one. Don't invite him in. I can tell you that. Whatever you do, don't invite him in.
Is it like the Black-Eyed Kids?
That is in one way like the Black-Eyed Kids, yeah. Don't invite in the Black-Eyed children either.
How many cases have you heard about that?
Oh, I did a video or two on the Black-Eyed Kids, 2 videos, one live show and one not live. Yeah, those are spooky. There's footage of them too out there on the net.
Do you believe they are evil and nefarious?
Yeah, I wouldn't trust a Black-Eyed Kid as far as I could throw it.
Where do you think they go? There's only one story that I have ever heard where someone let them into their house, but they didn't directly let them in. They just kind of forced their way in.
Oh, really? I didn't hear that one.
And I don't know if the guy had the tar beaten out of him or he just kind of blanked out and wasn't feeling good or felt victimized afterwards. But he said when he woke up, they were gone. Nothing was robbed. His wallet was still there. Phones were still there. Furniture, televisions were still there. Jewelry was still there. But he doesn't remember what happened when they came in.
What probably saved him is that he did not invite them in, and that they were forced their way in themselves.
So for people who may not understand, what is supposed to happen if you let black-eyed children into your home?
Death and dismemberment comes to mind.
I had a friend of mine, Jacob Rice. He actually had an encounter with a black-eyed kid at his fence. He lives in rural Washington State, and he was walking his dogs outside. He had just he heard this, excuse me. So he walks up to his fence, and there's a boy there.
Wow.
You can barely see the boy, and the boy was like, "Can I borrow your phone?
Oh,
Can
my
you let me
goodness.
so I can borrow your phone?" He's like, "Well, no, he lives in a rural area where like there's only a couple houses on his street, okay, and there's not a lot of kids that are roaming around there." And long story short, at the end of this, the boy goes away. The dog was continually growling at the boy, but something didn't sit right with Jake afterwards. And when he went and reviewed his security camera footage, there was never a boy there.
Wow.
Blew me away. Still
That's
bugs me
incredible.
to this day. And it's never happened again. I'm like, man, could you imagine if you would have let him in?
Good decision on not letting him use your phone.
No kidding. What's your thoughts on things like mermaids?
In Scotland area there, they have myths and legends about the blue men, who are people, blue men who live under the sea.
Do you believe that they are evil in order to help sink ships?
I think the way it works though with the blue men is that they challenge the captain of the ship, I think, to some kind of game of the nines, to where they try to top one another, and if they lose the game, then they will raid the ship or even sink the ship, making it much easier for them to raid from underwater.
Yeah, I've always been curious about that because, a lot of the like when we bring Varla Ventura on here, she talks about them almost acting like sirens, where they're trying to lustfully lure the sailors overboard and into the water to almost rescue them. And in return, once the sailors fall into the water, they literally gnaw the dude apart, much like piranha fish would.
Wow,
That's not good.
that's not good.
That's not good. It's not all Ariel and Disney under the sea. Believe you me. Watch out for them damn mermaids.
It's all fun and games till the screaming starts.
You got that right. Let's go to this. What about caves and cave systems? Do you think they're all connected? Do you think they all have aliens or Bigfoot in them?
A lot of people believe that there's a lot more interconnectivity than one might have you believe. Not only natural caverns, but also man-made caverns and tunnels excavated by the military.
So in other words, what you're saying is if you find a cave, don't go in it.
That sounds like good advice.
Oh yeah. I do have to ask you this one before we say goodnight to you, my man. And that is about Elvis and how many different Elvis sightings are around. I mean, look, in the 80s, it was a big hot to trot story, and into the 90s that Elvis was still alive, that he never died in Graceland in 1976. But you've got one story where you continually report on different Elvis sightings.
One of the best ones, the one that has photographic evidence, film evidence, is when Elvis supposedly, and you can see it for yourself, Elvis supposedly appeared as an extra in the movie Home Alone, the first one. And it's the scene is where the mother they decide the mother is going to go back alone because they discovered they left their kid home alone, and she's at the airport, and over her left shoulder, in the background, there he is. It's amazing.
Oh, all of us are going to go on YouTube and try and find that now.
It's the airport ticket counter scene.
Now I got to look. I'm watching this right now, and that's where she's flipping out, trying to get a flight back to Chicago. And the guy's saying, "Well, we can't." I mean, is it Elvis? I don't know. How tall was Elvis?
He gets a good amount of screen time too. He gets a good 1 or 2 minutes of screen time. He's on film a lot in that scene.
Oh, that is weird. That is weird. And you think that's him?
It sure looks like him.
Well, I mean, when was Home Alone made? 1988?
Is that right?
Great job, Bill. Great
thanks,
job.
Dave. You too.
Get some claps here.
Golf
Great
clap.
show. Appreciate you doing it, my man.
Oh, thank you, sir.
And continued success to your channel, and good luck with what you're doing.
And you as well. Okay, if I use some clips from this on my show?
Yeah, go right ahead, man.
Sweet.
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
Anytime, buddy.
Thank you, Dave. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bill Madon, everyone. Night Terrors YouTube channel. Make sure you go hit subscribe on that.